So good to see you all now when we are approaching the end of the Arctic Circle Assembly. We are here to talk a little bit about the Polar Dialogue and take stock of what has happened for this 1 year since this initiative started. And a year ago, me and Antje Boetius, my co-chair for the Polar Dialogue Initiative, were here on this stage to talk about how we evaluate, how we estimated the future prospects of this initiative. Last year we had, as you could see in the video, a lot of sessions. During this year we have decided to sharpen our focus, and we did that in close collaboration with an amazing advisory board that has been very active in the last year. During the India Forum, we focused on natural hazards, but also the role of the Himalayan glaciers as a water supplier for billions of people. And during our session now, we have been focusing, among other things, on indigenous knowledge and research and how we can actually include the indigenous peoples actively and in reality in the research that's being done in the Arctic area. And we also spoke about future of science, and I know that many of you attended that session, and I think it's fair to say that the state of science requires an active dialogue and an active collaboration in the world. So I want to pass the floor to Antje Boetius, who has been an amazing co-chair and is an amazing scientist and has been the co-chair of this initiative for the last year, and also to Henry Burgess, which is going to take over as co-chair now for the next year. And I am sure that they have many thoughts after this assembly on the state of science, but also what can be the use of this initiative to promote professional dialogue on Arctic and Antarctic and polar research. Antje.
Thank you, Katrín. Yeah, dialogue is such an important technology to us humans, right? And so the idea of having a polar dialogue track here during the conference has helped to expand our views from the Arctic Circle, the Arctic we embrace, to other important subjects of the cryosphere. So we have discussed also a vision to Antarctica, a vision to the cold waters, a vision also to the high mountains, and this makes the Polar Dialogue special. The Polar Dialogue, in my view, has also been successful making voices heard that are normally not on a panel, on a plenary, and that this year included even Wales that had their own voice during one of my favorite sessions this year. I've had a couple of good input and feedback from graduate students who are here, from students, from young people, and they said it's fantastic that you can listen to people you normally don't have a contact with, and we've just had this in an earlier session, listening to an admiral who was asked lots of questions that were hard, and so who gets the pleasure of listening to an important admiral, and what answers would he give when there are really deep questions about our futures? And I think with this, the Polar Dialogue has deserved a good, strong future. It's of course great with Henry that can run it towards the International Polar Year. And I'm happy to pass on the torch. And I would like to thank you, Katrín, also for that leadership. And I see Eva here, who has been behind the scenes. Thank you very much for keeping us all together. And let's just make sure that our future needs a lot of scientific fact, but needs a lot of good governance and needs a lot of input from businesses, from people all over the world. And last but not least, again, here in the Arctic are people that have the deepest cryosphere knowledge of all of humankind. They must be heard.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the confidence you have in me as co-chair, and I very much look forward to co-chairing with you in the year or so ahead. It's been a really interesting Polar Dialogue this year. I think the fact that we've concentrated a little bit around oceans, around the state of science and International Polar Year has been really positive, and that's given us some real focus this year. I might reflect, you might hear some of the words that you've said in some of the polar dialogue over the last couple of days back, and I hope that's okay, because some of that has stuck with me. One of the things that has stuck with me very clearly is the importance of speaking science and knowledge truth to power. And I think that's especially the case now. We heard that in the State of Science presentation here, and that was, even though that wasn't a very Arctic discussion, it spoke absolutely to the issues that we're interested in the Arctic. And someone said something very powerful in one of the sessions. They said that those who can speak up clearly and explicitly should do that, but we should recognize that not everyone can do that, but those who can should. And those who can't should still stand up for the benefits of international cooperation in science and knowledge. And they should do it and work in it and promote it and take every opportunity to show how good it is, even if other people are trying to undermine that activity. And that we should keep talking about these issues. We shouldn't allow other people to claim the space, but we should retain this space and keep talking about it and keep doing what we know, what we think, what we hope are the right things to do. When we think about the International Polar Year, of course, there is a focus, there will be a focus on the Arctic and the Antarctic. That's where the success has been. That is where the true pressure for the globe is. But we recognize there are huge impacts across the high mountain regions and the cryospheric regions as well. And so as the International Polar Year develops, we will work very closely with and alongside the UN Decade for Action on Cryospheric Sciences. So we want those global connections. We want all of that to be included in that action. So when you hear us talk about the International Polar Year and the focus on the Arctic and the Antarctic, that's true, but we are not forgetting the rest of the high mountain regions and the cryosphere regions as well. And then the thing I would finish on was a specific example that I think really spoke to this idea of you can be in crisis and yet something really good can still come. And a colleague was talking about what happened to Japan after the end of the Second World War. And he was talking about how the International Geophysical Year, that we also talk about as the third IPY, enabled Japan to invest in a positive future and progress overseas because they were able to establish research missions and stations as part of that International Geophysical Year. And it gave them a purpose and a profile and a diplomat and a science diplomacy, even though we didn't speak about it in that way then, that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And I thought that's a really good example of how this works. And of course, it's counterpointed and emphasized by the fact that Japan's new polar research vessel, their dedicated icebreaker, will be an international platform for research. And there will be a call, relatively soon for other countries to go and use that platform. And what a progression from where they and other countries were in 1945 afterwards to now, where they're dedicating a whole ship to international collaboration. I think that's the spirit that we should try and capture within the International Polar Year and beyond. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking very much forward to our collaboration, but I also want to use this opportunity to thank you, Antje. And maybe because last year I said, when Chairman Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson phoned me and asked me to chair this initiative, he said, we should try this. We should try this for 2 or 3 years and then see what happens. After 1 year, I feel that we have actually been useful. We have been useful to the debates and in interconnecting different voices, not only scientists talking to scientists, but also to policymakers and just normal people, indigenous people, all sorts of people. So, Antje, just to conclude this very short session, are you optimistic for this initiative and others that are really embracing the idea of multilateral collaboration to promote science and knowledge?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so charming to meet you all. It's so good to be amongst people of the Arctic, people who have an interest in the Arctic and polar regions and high mountains. And all of us should, all of the humans of this planet have to understand that it is the cold areas, it's the ocean, it's the ice that keeps the planet habitable. And we should just talk about it that way. So I'm optimistic. And of course, as you know, optimism is a kind of a civil duty anyways.
Well, I think it's a perfect final word. Now we are into the final session of the Arctic Circle Assembly. So we will meet each other here at the reception later on. But thank you all, and thank you for attending all the sessions of the Polar Dialogue and for your very powerful participation. because that's really what makes it all worthwhile. So thank you.
Cheers. And congratulations.